What if I told you there's a war being fought right now? Not with bullets and bombs, but with currencies and contracts. It's a quiet struggle for the economic soul of an entire continent, one that decides who gets rich from Africa's incredible wealth, and who stays poor. While we're all distracted by flashing headlines, a revolutionary idea is gaining steam again. It's a plan to unite 1.4 billion people under a single, powerful currency and finally break the financial chains that have held Africa back for centuries. This isn't just a fantasy. This is the story of an idea so bold it rattles the world's financial capitals. It's a vision centered on a new currency, sometimes called Afro Money, and it represents a direct challenge to the colonial systems that never really left. This old dream is being championed by a new generation of leaders, personified by the defiant young president of Burkina Faso, Ibrahim Traore. He and others aren't just asking for a seat at the table, they're talking about flipping the whole table over. The question is no longer if Africa will rise, but how. And the answer might just lie in this radical vision to ditch the dollar, abandon the euro, and forge a new economic destiny. Is this the dawn of a truly sovereign Africa, or a dream so ambitious it's doomed to fail? Stick with me, because the reality is more electrifying than you can imagine. To get why this idea is so explosive, you first have to understand the prison it's designed to break out of. It's a prison with no visible bars, but its walls are just as real. They're walls built of economic dependency, financial control, and historical injustice. For decades, the story of Africa has been one of mind-boggling wealth living side by side with crushing poverty. The continent has it all: gold, diamonds, cobalt, uranium, oil, and fertile land. So why are so many African nations still dependent on foreign aid and crippled by debt? The answer is a dirty little secret the world's powers don't like to talk about. The system was designed that way. Exhibit A in this case is the CFA franc. For those who don't know, it's a currency used by 14 African nations, mostly former French colonies. France created it in 1945 as a supposed gift. But this gift came with strings attached, strings that turned into economic shackles. For a long time, these African nations were forced to deposit 50% of their foreign currency reserves into the French treasury. Let that sink in. Half the wealth generated by sovereign nations wasn't held in their own banks, but in the vaults of their former colonizer. While that rule was recently changed for West African nations in 2020, the system structure still grants France significant influence, and is seen by many as a symbol of neocolonialism. Imagine a farmer in Senegal or a miner in Mali. A huge portion of the value they create doesn't go to build schools or hospitals at home. It reinforces an economic system that benefits Europe. It's political independence on paper, but economic dependency in reality. And leaders who've dared to challenge this system have often paid the highest price. But the CFA franc is just one part of a bigger problem. The whole continent is held hostage by the dominance of the US dollar and the euro. When an African country wants to trade with its neighbor, say, Nigeria wants to buy goods from Ghana, it's often a mess. They can't just trade in their own currencies, the naira and cedi. They frequently have to convert their money into US dollars, make the trade, and then the other country converts the dollars back. Think about how absurd that is. Two sovereign nations, right next door to each other, forced to use the currency of a country thousands of miles away just to do business. At every single step, money is lost. Billions are siphoned off the continent every year in conversion fees and exchange rate losses alone. This makes trading within Africa slow, expensive, and a huge headache. While payment systems like the Pan-African Payment and Settlement System, PPSS, are trying to fix this, the deep-rooted reliance on foreign currencies remains a massive hurdle. This system creates constant vulnerability. When the U.S. Federal Reserve adjusts interest rates in Washington, economies in Africa tremble. Their futures are tied to policies made for American or European interests, not African ones. And this has a devastating human cost. It means fewer opportunities for the continent's brilliant young population. It fuels a brain drain, forcing the best minds to leave home to find work. It means the borders drawn by colonizers over a century ago, lines on a map that cut through ancient kingdoms, remain very real economic walls. This is the prison. And a new generation of leaders is now daring to dismantle it. This revolutionary fire didn't just come from nowhere. It's the rekindling of an old flame, the unfinished business of Pan-Africanism. You can hear the echo of Kwame Nkrumah, Ghana's first president, who famously said, "We face neither east nor west, we face forward." He dreamed of a United States of Africa with a common government and a single currency, knowing that political freedom without economic freedom was hollow. You can feel the spirit of Thomas Sankara, the revolutionary leader of Burkina Faso. Sankara was way ahead of his time. He rejected Western loans, famously saying, "He who feeds you controls you." He championed local industry and self-sufficiency. But his defiance made him a threat, and he was assassinated in a 1987 coup that many believe had foreign support. These leaders were silenced because their vision of a truly sovereign Africa is the single greatest threat to powers who profit from a divided continent. For decades, it seemed their dream was buried with them. But now, something's different. A storm is gathering, and at its eye is Captain Ibrahim Traore. He's more than a president. At 36, he's become a symbol of resistance across the continent. He doesn't use the polished words of a politician. He speaks with the raw frustration of a generation that's had enough. He talks about a complete reset of Africa's relationship with the world. And he's not just talking. He kicked out French military forces from Burkina Faso, a bold move that sent a clear message. He then forged the alliance of Sahel states, AES, with neighboring Mali and Niger, whose governments had done the same. In early 2025, they all officially left the Economic Community of West African States, ECOWAS, a regional bloc they felt was controlled by foreign interests. This was the drawing of a new front line. The AES is now exploring deeper economic cooperation, a move that could one day lead to its own currency, directly challenging the CFA franc. This is what terrifies the old powers. It's not just one small country acting out, it's a coordinated ideological movement. For a country like France, it means losing a privileged sphere of influence. For the global financial system, built on the dollar, the idea of a Pan-African currency backed by the continent's immense mineral wealth is a systemic threat. Africa holds around 30% of the world's critical mineral reserves. Imagine if that wealth was no longer priced in dollars or euros. The geopolitical shockwaves would be huge. They are watching this movement with fear, and the reported coup plots and assassination attempts against Traoré show just how high the stakes are. He's not just leading a country, he's igniting a continent. So what does this revolutionary vision actually look like? It's not just a vague dream, it's a three-pillar blueprint for continental liberation being championed louder than ever. It's a strategy to tear down the prison of dependency, brick by brick. Pillar 1. Afro Money Financial Emancipation. The heart of the vision is the creation of a single, continental currency, the idea known as Afro Money. This is the ultimate weapon for economic sovereignty. The concept is staggering: one currency for 54 nations, uniting a market of 1.4 billion people. The goal is to cut the knot of dependency in one clean stroke. With a single currency, those billions lost to exchange fees and intra-African trade would disappear. A merchant in Morocco could buy from a supplier in Mozambique as easily as someone in California buys from Texas. The entire continent would become a massive, single market, the world's largest by population. This would finally unleash the true power of the African Continental Free Trade Area, AFCFTA. But it's deeper than that. A single African currency, controlled by Africans, means the continent could finally price its own resources. The price of Ghanaian cocoa or Congolese cobalt would no longer be dictated only in dollars on foreign exchanges. Africa could denominate its wealth in its own currency, backed by its own resources. This would fundamentally shift global economic power. Skeptics immediately asked if this is even possible, pointing to the huge challenges. But supporters have a powerful response. the European Union. They ask, if Europe, a continent of bitter rivalries and different languages, could create the euro, why can't Africa? Pillar 2, the Pan-African passport erasing the colonial lines. The second pillar is just as powerful. Creating a single, Pan-African passport for all citizens, allowing total freedom of movement. This is about tearing down the invisible walls that have separated Africans from each other for over a century. Right now, the irony is bitter. A European tourist can often visit more African countries without a visa than an African citizen can. These borders, drawn by colonial powers in Berlin in 1884, serve little purpose today other than to slow down African progress. The vision is for any African to be able to travel, live, work, and invest anywhere on the continent. Imagine the explosion of collaboration. A student from Egypt could easily study in Ghana. A tech startup in Kenya could hire talent from across the continent, creating a single talent pool of 1.4 billion people. This isn't a brand new idea. The African Union launched a diplomatic e-passport in 2016, but progress has been slow. This vision calls for a passport for everyone, a practical step to build a shared identity. It's a declaration that an African is home anywhere in Africa. Pillar 3. One unified economy forging a superpower. The final pillar ties it all together, using a single currency and passport to build a truly unified African economy. This is about more than just trade, it's about strategic, continental-scale development. It means creating common-sense regulations so it's not easier for a foreign multinational to operate across Africa than it is for an African company. It means pooling resources for huge infrastructure projects, like high-speed rail connecting Cairo to Cape Town and Dakar to Djibouti. The ultimate goal is self-sufficiency. For centuries, Africa has exported cheap raw materials only to import expensive finished goods. A unified economy would focus on building continental supply chains, processing Africa's cocoa into chocolate in Africa, refining Africa's oil in Africa, and turning Africa's coltan into smartphones in Africa. It's a fundamental shift from dependency on aid and loans toward building sustainable wealth from the ground up. Now let's be real. To say this will be easy would be a lie. The road to a united Africa is blocked by colossal obstacles, both inside and out. These are the Goliaths that the new Davids have to face. First, there's internal division. The same colonial borders they want to erase have created national interests. Many governments are afraid to give up power to a higher authority. Open borders, while appealing, can spark fears of uncontrolled migration and job competition. A legacy of distrust between nations, sown by colonizers, still makes collaboration a massive challenge. Second, the technical hurdles are huge. For a single currency to work, you need economic convergence that just doesn't exist yet. The economies of Nigeria and a much smaller nation are worlds apart. How do you set one interest rate that works for both? The digital and physical infrastructure needed for a secure currency and passport system also needs massive investment. Third, there's the security threat. In a region already fighting insurgencies, completely open borders are a serious concern. Without continent-wide security cooperation, porous borders could be exploited by criminals and terrorists, making things worse, not better. Finally, and maybe the biggest obstacle, is external pressure. The global powers who benefit from a divided Africa won't just stand by and clap. They have a long history of interference. The pressure won't be a declaration of war. It will be subtle. Threats of sanctions, downgrading credit ratings, and funding opposition movements to destabilize defiant governments. The serious threats against leaders like Traoré are a stark reminder that this is a dangerous game. The forces against this vision are powerful, entrenched, and have everything to lose. We are at a historic crossroads. The idea of Afro Money, a Pan-African passport, and a unified economy is more than just an economic debate. It's the front line of a global fight for dignity and sovereignty. On one side, you have the old world order that has kept Africa rich in resources but poor in practice. On the other, a new generation is rising, led by defiant voices like Ibrahim Traore, who refuse to accept the chains of the past. They are putting forth a vision that is as audacious as it is inspiring, a continent united, a people liberated, and a future built with their own hands. The obstacles are immense. The Goliaths of internal division, logistical nightmares, and foreign interference are powerful. Success is not guaranteed. But for the first time in a long time, the dream of Nkrumah and Sankara is no longer a whisper from the past, it's a roar echoing across the continent. The world is watching, hoping this fire fizzles out. But what do you think? Is a united Africa with a single currency possible in our lifetime? Is this a fantasy, or the dawn of a new era? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. And if you believe that Africa's vast wealth should benefit Africa's people, if you believe its destiny should be in its own hands, then share this video. Turn your click into a statement. Let the world know you're watching, and that you stand on the right side of history.